So goal is over the next hour, I'm going to increase your awareness about how to become an effective listener. And I'm sure all the people around you and your colleagues and business associates will thank you for it, or you'll notice it anyway. So the first question I want to ask is, are you actually a good listener? I want you to ask yourself, if you ask the people that really know you and that really love you, or the people that work with you, are you a good listener? What would they say to that? Would they say you were a good listener or not? So ask most people if they're a good listener, and what does everybody say? They normally always say, of course I'm a good listener. And the people that are in the webinar today, I wonder if you're all saying to yourself, of course I'm a good listener. Obviously I am. But in reality, very few people are actually good, effective listening. So of all the people that are on the webinar, the people that are saying, I'm a good listener, I really am, which is probably most of you, maybe you could be better, because it's just our perception. So over the next hour, I'm going to address some of the things that are really crucial to what makes a good listener, and how that we can form some habits to help us to better connect with people that we're actually communicating to, so that then you will be able to look at increasing your listening. Now, I've got a little chat. Someone's put a little message in here. Oh, Darren said hello. Hi, Darren. So now, when we're looking at this, if everyone on the webinar is saying, yeah, I'm a great listener, I really do think I'm a good listener, the odds are not actually in your favour. There was a study done of over 8,000 employees from various backgrounds and various jobs, and found that, again, most of these people believed that they were an effective listener. That was the consensus, that they all felt that they were an effective listener. But the thing is, no way can everybody be an effective listener. What happened in the study of 8,000 people, that there was only about 25% of the group of 8,000 studied that were actually above average at their listening skills. So the rest of the other 75% were not actually very good listeners, but they thought they were. So if we look at the people who are on the webinar today, there's only around 20–25% that are above average in their listening skills. So we need to look at how we can do this. So what is causing this misconception? What is making this misconception in our minds happen? While most people agree that listening is a very important skill, a majority don't feel a strong need to improve it. So those that are on the webinar, congratulations, because you obviously feel that you want to learn more about listening and you feel that you might be able to improve it. So well done for actually coming on the webinar. But most people do not work on improving their listening skills, and most people don't feel that they need to improve their listening skills. This is probably because effective listening isn't something that we actually talk about, which is strange, because being social creatures, we actually thrive on communication, and listening. Now, this is really, this is key. Listening is arguably the most important aspect of effective communication. So I'll say that one again, because it's really important. I really want you to take that away. If that's the only thing you take away from the webinar, take this away, is that listening is the most important aspect of effective communication. So I'm talking about the people that we communicate with that are really, really important to our lives. So our partners in life, our husbands, wives, partners, but people that we share our life with, our business partners, our team at work, our sports colleagues that we do sports with. Effective communication with this community of people that we spend every day with is really crucial to our life. Now, if we're wanting to increase our communication with them, and the most important aspect of communication is listening, then it's, you know, a huge opportunity to increase our communication just by doing nothing. You know, and I love that old adage of, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. That we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, that whatever we're doing in life, whatever communication we're having with people, we should always be listening twice as much as we're speaking. So again, if you can take that away, that's just going to be a nice little reminder for you, whatever meeting you're in, or any kind of negotiations, or you know, planning, always listening to your team or your colleagues twice as much as you're talking. And that will really improve your communication dramatically. So why does effective listening matter? So we did a study of managers and employees. Well, I didn't do the study, actually. I researched the study. And these were in high stressful situations. And they found out that listening was 40% of the variance in effective leadership. So if you're wanting to be an effective leader, and we look at what's the difference between an effective leader and not an effective leader, there's 40% difference if you are an effective, if you are a good listener. And so 40% basically stands for a massive difference to your leadership skills if you're a good listener. So if you think of somebody that you believe is a really great effective leader in your life, if you think of a great teacher, if you think of a great boss, if you think of a great parent, you will probably find that they're a very good listener. And you'll probably identify that they're a very good listener. And that is a huge, huge trait of an effective leader. And, you know, a funny thing is often you'll have a meeting with somebody, or you'll meet someone for the first time and you'll think, hey, they were a really nice person, I got on really well with them. Well, often I've found when I've been a fly on the wall and watched these interactions, that the reason why the person thought they were a great person was because they were a good listener. They let the other person talk, and they were using the old 2 ears and 1 mouth as a guide, listening twice as much as I was speaking. And then the person comes away and thinks, hey, they were a really good person, I really like that person. Well, maybe because they listened, and subconsciously we might not have even noticed that. So if we're looking at leadership as a skill and we're wanting to be a better leader, listening is 40% of the skills of being a really good leader. So it's something that all of us as leaders can really focus on improving on. So when we look at leadership and listening, as a leader working on your listening skills, it will help us focus on creating better bonds and better trust between you and the people you work with. So imagine you're working with a potential client, and you really focused on listening to them really, really well about what problems that you were solving, about how you can help that organisation. And the difference between someone who is a salesperson or someone who's putting a proposal together, who's got good listening skills, opposed to someone who just goes out there and word vomits how good their product is, will be the difference between getting that client and not getting that client. Because people do business with people they know, like and trust. And if you're having a meeting with somebody and they're really listening to your needs, they're listening to your problems, they're listening to how that problem occurs for your organisation and what your needs are, they're going to be a lot more likely to do business with you. And again, working with, if you're, say, have a team and you're a leader with a team, the better you can listen to what they want, the more you can actually create that environment for them to work in, so that then their needs are met and they're engaged in the job, and they're really loving coming to work, and they're loving being part of a team, because people love coming to work with people they enjoy working with. So if as a leader you're listening to the team more about what their needs are, what they want, then they will be more engaged because they'll want to come to work and they'll want to engage with the people more. So being a good listener, it will also help demonstrate the concern you have for their well-being. and it will make them so much more committed to what they're doing at work if you're really listening to what they need. You know, and I've often asked my clients, you know, when we're talking about team members and they're not working out, I'll say, when was the last time you had a one-to-one with them? Oh, no, I don't have time for that. Well, hold on. If you had a one-to-one with them and listened to, okay, what's going right in the job, what's not going right, what are their challenges, what do they enjoy, what do they not enjoy, and just sat and listen to them, and what are their goals out of work as well as in work, it could make a 360 turnaround difference in somebody. And I've seen it happen when their person who's their upline or their manager or their boss or the business owner really interested in them and really listens to them and really wants to find out about their goals and what's important to them, what makes them happy, what best environment they can work in. It makes a massive difference, and it could be the difference between someone leaving and somebody staying. And I've heard other people, old school people, that just say, oh no, I'm not going to waste time having a one-to-one, I pay them, they should turn up. Well, it's not like that anymore. The workplace is not like that anymore. People need to be engaged and valued and listened to be really part of an important team that makes the business what it is. So can be instrumental. Another thing it does is it reduces conflict massively. I hear so many people that just jump to conclusions without listening first. So effective listening tends to reduce the frequency of interpersonal conflicts. There is a direct correlation between someone who's a good listener and the amount of conflict that they have in their life, because it's likely that the dispute can be resolved by coming to a win-win solution. And how do we get to a win-win solution? Well, think about it. When you feel as though no one's listening to your side of the story, you'll be more likely to be on the defense and be more passionate about your point if nobody's listening. And I've heard people in disputes where the more the person is not listening that they're trying to communicate with, the more they shout, the angrier they get, the heated up the conversation gets. And I've seen interactions with people arguing when both of them are actually shouting their own point and neither is listening. So it's not actually going anywhere. So if you feel as though your concerns are being taken into account, you'll probably be much more likely to agree to a compromise than if someone is just shouting and not listening. If you're both listening and you're both really concerned with how the other person feels, you'll be a lot more likely to come to a common ground. So the key takeaway here is that if you have conflict in your life now, and if you're the type of person that does have conflict, if you would like to reduce that conflict, I would urge you to start to listen more and just stop and listen. And you will find the conflict reduces dramatically. So as I said at the beginning of this slide, people that are good listeners have a much less occurrence of conflict in their relationships at work and at home, in their social circles. So again, great way to identify an area to improve. If you do find yourself having quite a few conflicts, this could be really making a big impact for you. So the other thing is, what actually is effective listening? You know, how do we know that we're actually like listening well? You could be sitting there and you know, not actually listening properly at all. So at this point, I'm sure you're ready to understand what is that difference. First of all, describe what you think in your head what effective listening is. What do you think effective listening is? And if people, you know, want to, they can write in the chat box, or the questions. If you want to write in the chat box, you can write to everybody. But what do you think effective listening is? Because you could be listening but not actually effective listening. So if you want to share, I'm more than welcome to have people write in the chat box and just say what they think effective listening is. So if anyone does, I will keep an eye on it. So effective listening is basically actively absorbing the information So this is what effective listening is, while showing the speaker that you're listening and engaged, and then providing feedback that shows them that they've been heard. So this is my definition of an effective listener. So again, effective listening, and you might want to write it down, is actively absorbing the information while showing the speaker, the person who's speaking, that you're listening and engaged, and then providing feedback that shows them that they've actually been heard. That's what effective listening is. We've got, someone has said eye contact. Yes, really important. Another person said eye contact, repeating what they've said. Yeah, very important, so that they know they've been understood. Yes, very, very true. Open body language is another one, which I've got a bit more information about a bit further. So thinking when you're in your conversation with someone, you know, are you making them feel like they've been heard? Are you absorbing the information, or is your mind off at the fairies? Are you providing feedback to them that they have actually been heard? So in other words, an effective listener shows speakers that they have been heard and they've been understood. So when you're in a conversation, thinking after you finished it, did that person realise that they were being heard? Did they know that they were understood? And how have you actually communicated that? How have you displayed that in words, and as someone said in the chat, in body language as well? So, you know, when we look at the reward of being heard, you know, humans are creatures who thrive. We thrive on relationships. So one of the best things that we can do for another person is to show them that their communication is actually working and that their message is being delivered effectively, because we love relationships. So how wonderful is it when someone really knows that you know, they've been effectively heard? Have you ever had a conversation when you've felt more confused and lost than you did when you started the conversation, and you've felt to yourself, I don't really understand, you know, I'm very confused here? That's poor communication. So think of a time when you sat down and someone discussed their thoughts in a way that you, when you finished that conversation, you felt a sense of relief because you really understood what they were saying. You really felt a lot clearer from what they actually communicated to you. And that's what we want to have. And, you know, I've had people say, you know, true communication is the response that you get. So if someone walks away and they really feel that sense of relief that they've understood you, well, then you know that you've really, you know, communicated well, they've listened well, and vice versa. So it's important to make sure that you actually understand that the message is being heard, that their message that they want to give to you is actually clear to them, that you've got that message, if that makes sense, and the reward is being heard. So someone mentioned a minute ago about body language. So in effective listening, body language is really important. And for me as a coach, you know, it's something that I'm always aware of. So body language is an important component of listening. So research suggests sometimes people say that the body language is more important than the actual words that people are speaking. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, it's important to actually face them. So face the person that you're actually speaking with. Someone mentioned before eye contact. That's really important. It shows them that they've got your undivided attention. Another faux pas that some people do is they cross their legs or their arms when they're listening, and they'll sit back. So psychologically, if you're crossing your arms or your legs, it can be a bit of, it can be interpreted as a sign of defense, or a sign of awkwardness, or a sign of shutting off. So if you're looking to create an environment of openness, keep your arms open and keep your legs uncrossed, and sit in plain view of the person that you're actually talking to, preferably with no barriers, preferably without a desk in your way. And it makes such a difference. And you imagine if you're speaking with somebody that you work with, maybe someone that's in your team, and you're having a conversation to them, or you're listening to them, and you're listening from the other side of the desk. It gives a totally different perspective to them than if you were listening and you moved your chair around and sat next to them, and you were actually looking at them from right in front of them, from body language wise. Totally different to if you're sitting behind the desk listening to them. So these small changes can make a huge difference to people knowing that they've been heard. Another tip, very, very basic, but very simple, very common sense, but it's not done very much these days. And I've noticed it. I've looked in cafes, I look in meetings, and it's really important to put your phone down. Get rid of the phone. If you're talking with someone while they're looking around the room, or they're looking at their computer screen, or they're looking at their phone, or they're looking at their watch, how does it feel? It feels like they're not listening. And so if you're wanting to improve your leadership, if you're wanting to improve your communications, if you're wanting to reduce conflict, and then I would urge you to put your phone down, or off, or silent, or away when you're in a meeting with someone, or when you're having a conversation, because you're either having the conversation or you're either on the phone, not both, unless you're waiting for an emergency, and then it can be explained at that time. A lot of people think they can multitask and hold a conversation via text while they're talking to somebody, but there is no doubt it will create tension. It's a bad habit. The person who's listening to you will feel that they're not as important as whatever it is that you're being diverted to on the phone. So if you're having a conversation with someone that you love, or someone that's important, and you want them to know that you're listening, get the phone away. Have phone time, have no phone time, or have the phone on for emergencies, or pass it to somebody if you've got an emergency. Simple things like, team meetings should be part of the etiquette, that everyone's phones are away. Maybe having meals, or dinner time with the family, phones away. Having quiet time, a one-on-one with giving feedback to someone, or having a one-on-one session with one of your team leaders. Again, phone should be away, and the attention focused on them and not on a computer screen, unless you're both working on the screen. And it will totally change the way they feel that they've been heard. And if it's a habit that you do, change it. It will make such a difference to your relationships. So the next one is be attentive. That's something that is really important to people when they're actually listening, but also relaxed. Now, eye contact, as I said, is important, but not too much eye contact, because if you just stare at a person, they'll think you're pretty weird. Look away now and then, but be attentive, attentive. So nodding occasionally while you're listening is important, because if you don't actually show any sign that you're listening, it's not going to give them the actual acceptance that you are listening. The other thing as well is keeping an open mind when you're listening. So have people here ever judged people when they're listening, or mentally criticised them? So effective listening means listening without judgment. No judgment of the other person, no mentally criticising them, because what's happening is you're not listening. So you're not listening to respond when you're talking to somebody, when you're in a conversation with someone, you're listening to learn. So often I see people, and it might be something that you've seen done to yourself, people jump to conclusions. They jump in and say things before the person's even finished, or they jump in and say things instead of asking questions. Remember, listening is about listening to learn something, not listening to respond. So sometimes people they sentence grab. So sometimes when you're talking about information and you've got your own train of thought running through your mind, it makes sense to jump in and finish the other person's sentence for them. Don't be this person. because people just, I mean, we all don't like that when people do that. So listen to somebody in a conversation to learn, not to respond, because this is what they're talking to you for you to learn something. They're talking to you to communicate. So if you find yourself that you jump in sometimes because you've got something to add, just stop doing it, because we're listening to learn, not to respond, because we're looking at how we can be better listeners. And if this is you, if you're wanting to be a better listener, start to just take a breath. Every time you want to jump in, just take a breath and keep listening. And the relationships with that person will increase no end. They will be much better. So please don't be this person they're called a sentence grabber. Don't be a sentence grabber. Don't jump in and finish people's sentences or be jumping into what they're saying. Picture their words. So when someone is talking to you, try and paint a mental picture of what they're saying. So this can help you focus while also connecting more to the words that they're actually speaking. So when you're listening for a long stretch of a story, if you're concentrating on, remember keywords and phrases, and your brain will paint the picture. So if you just really focus in on listening to create that picture of what they're actually saying, it's easy for your brain to paint in all the rest. If your thoughts start to wander, refocus by asking a question that relates exactly to what they said. So that sometimes if you find somebody that you have to talk to regularly, gets you a bit bored, start to really listen, draw that picture in your mind and ask questions that relate directly to them. It's also okay to stop them and say something like, wait, I'm sorry, I would love you to just clarify that a bit more. I'm not sure what you were saying. I'm not understanding. I don't know that piece of equipment, or I don't know that word. Or you could say, could you just repeat that last bit? I didn't quite understand that. So this way, it really makes people know that you're actually trying to listen for understanding, not just listening for the sake of letting them think you're listening. So people don't mind the occasional interruption as long as it's exactly relating to what they were saying. People actually quite like that because it means that you're asking a clarifying question. So that's the only time that I would say a good listener would be appropriate to interrupt, is if you're going to ask them to just go deeper or to recap or just to clarify something that they were talking about. So for me, the other thing to consider is don't impose your solutions. So as a coach, often I'll know the answer to something, but it's not my job to give someone the solution. When you're listening to someone talking about a problem, please refrain from suggesting any solutions. And I know it's difficult for people to do because we all want to help people. So when the answer seems very clear, when we have the answer and we want to share it with them, most of the time, people just don't want that. They want to share their thoughts. They want to be heard. They just want to be listened to. And, it was interesting. I had someone, the other day talking about an experience where someone had found out that their partner had been cheating on them, and they'd rung their best friend and told them. And the person was wanting to know, what did they do? How could you give advice around that? And the person said, oh no, I just listened for an hour. That's all they wanted. They just wanted to be heard. And I didn't give any advice. I've never experienced that, and I didn't know what to say or do. I just listened. And they were very grateful for someone to just listen. And that's all. If you're bursting with fantastic ideas and you really need to say something, the only option there is if people are really, really desperate, you could say to them, would you like to hear my thoughts? You're actually asking permission. Or if they actually ask for your thoughts, fine. But it's not something that when people are actually sharing something that's really important, they generally just want to be heard. That's what they want. They want to be heard. And when someone comes to you with a really crucial problem, that 80-20 rule often will help. Let them talk for 80% of the time and you just have 20% of the time when it's all about them, when it's a challenge, when it's a real problem for them. So when you interrupt somebody, this is what's happening, right? We all think and speak at different rates. So it's important, if you're someone like myself that's a very quick speaker, and you've got somebody else who's a slow speaker, it's really important to refrain from butting in and fasting them up. It's really important to slow down to their pace. So if you want to be an effective listener, you've got to train yourself to stop interrupting, and also train yourself to be at the same pace of the person that you're listening to. So that sometimes, and because I'm a fast talker, sometimes I've been in this situation where I'm listening to someone and they're talking really slowly. Well, instead of hurrying them up, I've got to just take an extra breath, and I've just got to sit with it and think, okay, this person speaks at a different pace to me. So just be aware of pace, that people do speak at different paces, and it's important not to interrupt or cut them off with your thoughts because you're wanting to hurry it along. So by cutting somebody off with your thoughts because they're taking too long to get to the point, or they're being very slow at getting the point, what you're basically saying to them is, I'm more important than you are. My point's more important than yours. What I have to say is more interesting and more accurate, and I'm getting to the matter quicker than you are. What you're saying really doesn't matter, or I don't have the time for you because I'm having to butt in to hurry you up. You know, sometimes there's this thought that it's a contest of I'm going to butt in because I want to finish it, because I know what you're going to say. It's not a contest of guessing what they're going to say or guessing what the end is. Listening is about listening to their pace, listening to the story that they're actually telling you, and listening to learn. That's what it's about, not to butt in, not to finish their conversation, not to hurry them up because your pace is a lot faster than theirs. Although you may not intend to communicate any of these thoughts by butting in, this is what your actions would suggest to the other person. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're not a good listener, they're butting in, or they're finishing your sentence, or they're hurrying you up, the message that I would receive is that they're not interested, really, because they're more interested in what they have to say, and they're more interested in butting in and finishing it off for me. So if we're wanting to be a better leader, a better listener, we've got to refrain from that. We've got to really step back and take a breath. It's okay to take a breath. The other thing that's a great skill of an effective listener is learning to probe. So the best journalists, the best interviewers and researchers, they learn the importance of probing very early on in a conversation. Probing just means asking questions for additional information, but it can help you understand the situation more fully. So having some, interesting probing questions for people to have the opportunity to open up. Often at networking events, it can be a little bit awkward. If we're having the first conversation with somebody and, I want to be making them feel comfortable by being a great listener, probing questions like, what got you into this industry, or what do you love most about your industry? And often people will just think, oh, wow, they're actually interested in me, instead of talking great. And they'll start to tell you all about what made them get into their industry in the first place. And then you can stand back and listen. So effective probing comes from a non-judgmental place. And it follows the flow of what they've actually said previously, or the situation, the context of the situation. Additionally, probing really shows the person that you're actually speaking to that you're paying attention. It really shows the person that you're interested, and it really shows the person that you're fully invested in what they're actually saying. So if you're in, say, a meeting with somebody, it might be, you're talking to somebody about a proposal that you're going through with them for a big project that you're wanting to do for them. And we're, going through asking some questions. By asking probing questions about them as a person, like that question that I just put a minute ago, what made you get into this industry? What got you into this industry in the first place? It makes them actually think, hi, he's actually interested in me. He's interested in listening to me. He's not just interested in getting this deal across the line. And by sitting back and listening, well, this was my grandfather's business. And, I used to love coming here as a child. And, I really had this great relationship with my grandfather. Oh, what did you like, about your grandfather or whatever? It's really showing the person that you're interested in them by sitting back and listening to something that's special to them. And it really shows that you're invested in them as an actual person and listening to actually understand more about them. So the two places that I think in business are most effective is with teams and helping them to be engaged, but also with our clients. It makes such a difference. Don't put the speaker on the defensive. That's another one. Being an effective listener, what it does, it involves learning to respond in a way that won't sound off-putting to the person speaking. So this means avoiding questions like, why would you do that? Or, what could you have done? Why would you have done that? It puts the person off guard. It puts the person a bit off. It's actually inferring to that person that you're judging them. So while your intentions might be innocent, there's lots of phrases that will come off as judgmental, and it's not your goal when you're being an effective listener to actually be coming across as judgmental. So the topic on everyone's head is, at the moment, it might be, are you going to get vaccinated? Well, I hope you are. That's a judgmental comment. So that the person then might feel, oh, well, they might think differently to me, or vice versa. So when you are being an effective listener, try not to have comments that are accusing or that are showing the other person that you don't actually approve of them. Because then again, if you're having accusation questions like that, they're going to be realizing that the conversation is not going to go so well. So if you're wanting to be an effective listener, it's not a good idea. Don't be a topper. We all know what toppers are like. So sometimes, people, me included, are guilty of jumping in and sharing our own story about a topic that's being discussed. But it's a habit that we should try and break. Think of it from the perspective of the conversation of the person that you're listening to. They've come to share their thoughts about something. And in response, you've started talking about yourself. Now, it gives the impression that you're not listening or you don't care about the other person's experience. Now, although we usually mention our own experience in a way just to share with them that they're not alone, we actually risk sending the message that we're superior to them and that we're not important to them, that they're not important to us, that our story is more important. So our story is top there. So, well, I've done it worse than this. Someone's talking to you about a broken finger because they, maybe, slammed their car door on it or something like that, and they're coming to work and they're telling you about that. Well, then the next person, the topper person, comes in and says, well, I broke my leg by slamming it in here and blah, blah, blah. And we've just totally taken the conversation away from that person. So if you find yourself doing this, just finish your thoughts quickly if you have caught yourself doing it, and apologize. Just apologize when you've caught yourself doing it. Something like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get you off track. This is not my conversation. Let me, explain more about what happened. Where did it happen? Or was anyone with you? Or just ask them a question that gets them back to what they were saying. Because if you do have a habit, and lots of people do it, if you have a habit of being a topper, always wanting to, or one-upmanship, always wanting to one-up the conversation or the story that someone's saying, it makes people think that you're not listening. Even though you might be doing it to make them feel better, it makes them think you're not listening, because you're thinking of when you can butt in to tell them about your story that's better than their story. But it's not about you. They're sharing their story, and we want to hear their story because they're sharing it with you for a reason. So if you are a topper or a one-up person, or if this is a habit that you have, this would be something that you could really start to say, I'm not going to do that anymore, and stop that, because it will make a difference with your relationships if you do. Another word on giving advice, I want to reiterate that we have to be mindful about giving unsolicited advice. So most people give advice because they like to, but when you start advising without consent from your conversational partner, you've stopped listening and you risk dominating the conversation. So rather than assuming that someone wants your advice, be safe and remain quiet unless somebody asks for your opinion. If they ask for your opinion, that is a totally different point. But generally, people give advice because they want to give advice. They think they can give you advice, not because someone has asked for it. So please be mindful about giving unsolicited advice. If this is especially difficult, there's a couple of methods that I could recommend. Something like, have you thought about what your next step is? So if someone's coming to you and they've got a challenge and you don't know if they want advice or not, they're just sharing a problem. You might be a mate who's talking to you about a problem with one of the team at work. Oh, I've got this guy at work and he's always late, and he doesn't tell me when he's not coming to work, and it's really difficult. Okay, now is he wanting advice or not? We don't know. But what a lot of people who are not very good listeners do, they default to jumping in and telling him how to solve that problem. So, but he hasn't asked for advice. So by doing that, you're giving him unsolicited advice. So by asking him something like, have you thought about what your options are? Great. He might say, yes, I've consulted with a HR specialist and we're going to go through a performance management plan, and we're working out this performance management plan at the moment, and I'm going to give him a written advice. Now, he might have done all that, but you've jumped in giving this person unsolicited advice before he's even told you that. And the whole conversation might have been about this interesting experience with this HR consultant doing a performance management plan with them, but you haven't heard that because you've not got to it, because you've jumped in to give him unsolicited advice first. So this gives them a chance to actually tell you, yes, I've worked out a plan. Or on the alternative, if they're looking at you as an authority that might have had many of a similar challenge than they're sharing, then it gives them an opportunity to go, well, actually, no, I haven't. That's why I'm talking to you. Do you have some ideas? So that way you're giving them the perfect opportunity to ask you for ideas. Thank them for sharing the information with you, and let them know that you're here for any guidance. If you do want to tell them that you do have some ideas. So if they've shared information with you and they haven't asked for you for any ideas, and they've just wanted to share for you to listen, to learn, then at the end you could say, thanks heaps for sharing this. I'm really glad that you felt comfortable enough to talk about this with me. If you need any guidance around this, I'd be happy to talk about my experiences. Then that way you're being open to them, you're listening to them, you're showing them that you care enough to give them advice if they want it. So keep in mind that your goal as a listener is to try and develop a deeper bond with the person that you're communicating with. If your goal is to get a better connection with someone, then make an effort to work with them instead of telling them. So working with them is about listening. Working with them is about asking questions to clarify things and find out if they do need some support or help. But the main thing that people want when they come to you is just to listen. It's just to have somebody listen to them and learn about their challenge, whatever it is that they have at the time. So remember, when someone is with you sharing information, never give unsolicited advice until they've actually asked for it, or until they've come back if you've offered it. because it makes the world of difference, because they haven't asked for advice. As an active listener, your ultimate goal is to get as much information as possible in a timely manner, and to leave the conversation on better terms than you started the conversation on. So basically it means setting the environment for a comfortable conversation through your body language, being very mindful the way that you react to phrases and ideas, especially those that you don't agree with. So be mindful not to be judgmental, and watching your body language as far as any distractions. Ask questions of encouragement to the speaker so that they can share more information with you. And the last point is the one I just went through. Please refrain from giving any unsolicited advice if they don't want unsolicited advice. And remembering that one of the key traits of a good leader is a very good listener. And as I said right at the beginning, is most people think that they are a good listener. So coming out of this session, I'm wanting you to think, okay, well, am I that 20%, 25% that are good listeners, that are above average, or am I the rest? Am I the 75, 80% that are actually not? So in the next conversations that you have over the next few days, be mindful of, okay, am I jumping in? No, I'm not. Great. That's one tick for putting me up in the higher skill level of listeners. Am I actually giving unsolicited advice? No, I'm not. Great. Am I putting my phone and my distractions away when I speak to someone? Am I getting rid of barriers, getting rid of desks? Am I maintaining eye contact? Yes. Great. Am I listening to understand, or is my mind thinking about what I'm going to say that's going to one-up the person, or what advice I'm going to give them because I can fix all their problems? Or are you actually listening and writing the picture in your mind of what they're actually telling you and listening to learn instead of listening to actually butt in and give your point of view and give advice? And when you're listening, that twice as much as you're actually speaking is a good one to remember. And when you are listening, listen and ask questions and comments and verification so they actually know you're listening, and repeating and clarifying things about what they've said will also make you realize that's another tip to say, yes, you are a good listener. And keeping that mindfulness of the pace of the person that you're listening to might not be the same as yours. So you've just got to take some deep breaths and calm down without getting edgy about jumping in and hurrying them up. So I hope that has helped. I really enjoyed putting this together today, and it's really interesting to see how much impact being a good listener has on people's leadership skills and on their relationships. And we all want to have better relationships, and we all want to have better leadership skills. So it's a really easy skill that everyone can work on, that is not that hard to do, but it's not very common that people have good listening skills. So it's a real gem, and I hope everyone has taken away just one thing that they can do better, or one learning that they can actually go and apply in the relationships they have. Might be putting phones away in meetings, it might be changing the body language, it might be stopping that one-upmanship, or stopping giving advice until people ask for it, not giving unsolicited advice, not trying to fix everyone's problems. Might be that you're going to go into your next proposal and just listen for learning, not go in there spout gabbling about how great your product or service is. So I really hope that you've taken away a few things. If people would like to have any more information from me, happy to have a 15-minute phone consultation. Just pop me an email. Those of you that haven't read my book, I've got lots of information and tips there as well. So I hope it's been useful for everybody. I'm going to stop sharing. If there is any questions, I'm more than happy to ask questions. Thank you, Darren, to you too. If there is no questions, people can send me a message and I'll answer the question and get back to them today if you have any questions. So thank you. I hope you've all learned a bit.